Ladies and gentlemen, I want to begin with a simple truth, one that is often overlooked in the hustle of our daily lives, in the chase for innovation, in the relentless pursuit of progress. The human mind, as brilliant as it can be, is also fragile. It's a machine of astonishing complexity, yet it is susceptible to the smallest tremors of stress, to the tiniest misalignments in our lives. Imagine for a moment the neural pathways that govern our emotions, our decisions, our very sense of purpose. Every synapse is firing, every chemical messenger racing through the intricate circuitry of our brains, shaping our perception, our memories, our capacity for empathy. And yet, we rarely pause to consider the profound impact that neglect, isolation, or unspoken distress can have on this remarkable system. Consider the story of a young engineer I once met, someone whose intellect could rival the greatest minds of our era. She was working on cutting-edge neural interfaces, mapping out the connections between the human brain and emerging technologies. On the outside, her life appeared perfect. Accolades, recognition, a future brimming with possibility. But on the inside, she was quietly unraveling. Chronic exhaustion, anxiety, and the creeping sense of insignificance were slowly eroding her resilience. And the irony was stark. Here was someone building the future of cognitive technology, yet unable to sustain her own mental well-being. This is not an isolated case. It's a reflection of a deeper truth. No matter how advanced our technology becomes, the human element, the brain, the mind, the heart, remains the most complex frontier and often the most neglected. Now, I want you to imagine what it means when someone reaches out with sincerity, with vulnerability, and the world responds with indifference. There is a neurochemical reality to being heard, to being acknowledged. Dopamine and oxytocin surge when we feel connected. When our struggles are recognized, our brains literally light up with hope. But when those signals are absent, when we are met with silence or dismissal, the impact is measurable. Stress hormones like cortisol spike, neural networks associated with fear and anxiety strengthen, and the very architecture of our emotional brain begins to shift in ways that make recovery increasingly difficult. We are not designed to exist in isolation, yet in the frantic pace of modern life, disconnection has become an epidemic. And here is where the intersection of innovation and humanity becomes critically important. Technology can transport us to Mars, map the human genome, or accelerate renewable energy adoption. But it cannot replace the most fundamental need we all share: to be seen, to be understood, to be valued. I have spent decades thinking about how to push the boundaries of human capability, how to create solutions that defy what we once believed possible. Yet, if we do not address the human condition, the mental, emotional, and psychological landscapes of our society, then all these achievements risk being hollow, devoid of the very empathy that makes progress meaningful. I recall a patient I encountered in a clinic dedicated to neuropsychiatric care. He was a young man in his 20s, an aspiring inventor, brilliant but deeply distressed. He had come to me with a trembling voice and a heart heavy with fear. His inventions were promising, his ideas revolutionary, yet he was trapped in an internal storm of anxiety and despair. We talked long into the night about his fears, his ambitions, and the crushing weight of expectation. It was not advanced medication or groundbreaking therapy that provided the turning point. It was the act of being truly heard. The human connection, the acknowledgement that someone cared enough to listen, had a measurable, transformative effect on his brain chemistry. Within weeks, his depressive symptoms diminished, his creativity surged, and his ability to engage with the world was restored. This is the power of empathy, the science of listening, the undeniable truth that human attention and care are among the most potent interventions we have. We often think of impact in terms of material output. Companies launched, rockets launched, AI systems trained. But the deeper, more subtle forms of impact are those that alter the trajectory of an individual's life, the lives of those around them. Think about the ripple effect of being acknowledged, of having one person in the world who truly cares about your struggles, who invests a moment, just a single minute, into understanding your reality. That minute can change the trajectory of neural development, emotional resilience, and even life outcomes. This is not abstract speculation, it is neuroscience, it is psychology, it is the human truth. Let me take you further. The prefrontal cortex, the seat of decision-making, planning, and emotional regulation, is exquisitely sensitive to social cues. When we feel neglected or dismissed, its function diminishes. When we feel heard, its connectivity strengthens. Memory, learning, and creativity are profoundly influenced by the emotional climate we inhabit. For someone in distress, the presence of a listener is like oxygen to a suffocating mind. And yet, in the pursuit of monumental achievements, we often overlook these seemingly small, yet profoundly critical interactions. I want to challenge you to think about what it means to truly engage with another human being. Not to offer solutions immediately, not to prescribe answers, but simply to listen with full attention, to validate, to recognize the complex neuroemotional tapestry that makes up a person's inner world. There is a famous experiment in the field of psychology called the still face experiment, where infants are shown caregivers who suddenly become unresponsive. The infants, even at mere months old, react with distress, confusion, and attempts to re-engage. This demonstrates that even the earliest forms of human cognition are hardwired to expect attention, empathy, and connection. Now imagine the consequences in adulthood, when expectations of empathy are met with silence or neglect. The brain adapts, but often in maladaptive ways, reinforcing fear, social withdrawal, and despair. It's tempting to think that power, influence, or intelligence can substitute for this fundamental human need. They cannot. There is no algorithm, no technological marvel, no quantum leap in engineering that can replace the impact of genuine human concern. And yet, the irony is that those who are most capable of creating transformative change, the innovators, the visionaries, the leaders, are often the very ones most isolated, most in need of someone to recognize their humanity, to pause and simply listen. I want to share another example, this time from the world of extreme exploration. Consider astronauts on long-duration space missions. They are rigorously trained, mentally and physically resilient, equipped with the latest technology, yet the most profound challenge they face is psychological. The absence of immediate human contact, the isolation from meaningful social interaction, affects cognitive function, emotional stability, and even mission success. In a sense, this is a microcosm of our modern so. Despite being hyper-connected through devices and networks, we are paradoxically more isolated than ever before. The neural consequences are profound: increased anxiety, depression, and cognitive decline. We must recognize that caring, truly caring, is a neurological intervention. It is a protective mechanism. It is a life-saving technology, if you will, available to every one of us. And here is the critical insight: the act of listening, the act of presence, the act of validation, does not require an invention, a billion-dollar investment, or a groundbreaking algorithm. It requires intention, attention, and courage. It requires the willingness to step outside our own preoccupations and dedicate a moment, a minute, to another human being. For someone in despair, that minute may feel like an eternity of relief, a lifeline in the neural storm of stress and hopelessness. I have observed in both personal and professional contexts that the most transformative interventions are not always the most visible. They are quiet, subtle, almost invisible to the casual observer. Yet their effects echo across years, decades, and even generations. A single act of care, a single conversation, a single gesture of empathy can recalibrate neural networks, restore emotional equilibrium, and reignite purpose. And when multiplied across a community, across an organization, across a society, these seemingly small interventions accumulate into something extraordinary: resilience, innovation, and the capacity to thrive even in the face of unprecedented challenges. We live in a time when ambition and intellect are celebrated above all else, when the scale of achievement is measured in material output, in technological milestones, in metrics and KPIs. But let us not forget the human brain, the human heart, the human spirit, the most complex system in the known universe. It is fragile. It is powerful. and it is exquisitely sensitive to care, attention, and recognition. To ignore this is not merely a moral failure, it is a failure of logic, of science, of strategic foresight. Because no amount of innovation can compensate for the neglect of the very system that enables innovation in the first place. So, when someone reaches out, when they express vulnerability, when they beg, even silently, for acknowledgement, the question is not whether you can spare the time, the energy, or the resources. The question is, do you recognize the impact of that engagement? Do you understand that within a single minute of attention lies the power to change the trajectory of a human life, that within a moment of listening, a neural storm can be calmed, hope can be restored, and the capacity for greatness can be rekindled? I want to leave you with this thought. True innovation is not merely the creation of new machines, new technologies, new frontiers. True innovation is the ability to enhance the human experience, to protect and amplify the capabilities of the mind, to nurture resilience, to foster empathy. And sometimes, the most profound act of innovation is as simple as listening, as powerful as caring, and as transformative as offering one human being your undivided attention. So I ask you, if you care even a little, if you understand the stakes, if you grasp the neural and emotional realities of what it means to be human, please take a minute. Listen, engage, validate, recognize, because in that minute, lives can be saved, minds can be healed, and the very trajectory of human potential can be altered. This is not speculation, this is science. This is humanity. And this, ultimately, is the most important frontier of all. And as we think about this, I want to remind you that human brains are not designed to process prolonged ambiguity, prolonged neglect, or prolonged emotional isolation. Our limbic systems, those ancient structures that govern emotion, fear, and attachment, are constantly scanning our environment for safety signals. When those signals are absent, when empathy is missing, the body interprets it as threat. Heart rates increase, stress hormones surge, sleep is disrupted, and cognitive function diminishes. Over time, these small but chronic stressors accumulate, reshaping neural circuits, creating what neuroscientists call maladaptive neuroplasticity. This is why some of the most brilliant minds, the most creative, the most driven, can still fall into despair or self-sabotage. It is not a failure of intellect, it is a failure of connection. I have seen this play out in countless arenas, from the high-stakes world of startups to the solitary pursuit of space exploration. Take, for instance, the story of a researcher I once worked alongside, a person whose groundbreaking work in renewable energy promised to change the course of human civilization. He was tireless, brilliant, and fiercely committed. But when we met, he admitted something alarming. He was exhausted, emotionally depleted, and felt utterly alone in his struggle. The work he loved, the purpose he had devoted his life to, had become a source of isolation. It was not the intellectual challenge that wore him down. It was the absence of human recognition, the lack of someone who could see not just his output, but his experience. In that moment, I realized something profound about leadership, about responsibility, about the very nature of influence. It is not enough to inspire innovation, to create technology, to dream of Mars or artificial intelligence, or a carbon-free future. The true measure of impact is also in the lives we touch along the way, the human beings we choose to see, to care for, to validate. A single act of recognition can trigger a cascade of neurochemical changes, dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, that restore motivation, resilience, and creativity. This is not abstract theory, it is the science of human connection. Now consider the implications if we scale this insight. Imagine a society in which leaders, innovators, and visionaries actively practice deep listening, actively practice empathy, not as a performative gesture, but as a scientifically validated intervention. Mental health outcomes improve. Cognitive performance improves. Innovation flourishes not just in the lab, but in every corner of human endeavor. Communities become more resilient. Organizations become more adaptive. The entire trajectory of human progress shifts. And yet, so often, we overlook the simple, accessible interventions, the minute, the conversation, the moment of genuine engagement. I am reminded of a young entrepreneur I met at a technology summit. She was on the brink of launching a breakthrough AI system capable of accelerating learning for millions. Yet she confided in me, in a quiet voice, that she felt invisible, that her emotional exhaustion was threatening to derail her work. We spent a few hours talking, not about algorithms, not about projections, not about KPIs, but about her experience, her fears, her sense of isolation. By the end of that evening, her energy had shifted. Her mind, once clouded with self-doubt, was clear again. The neural pathways associated with reward, motivation, and cognitive control had been recalibrated simply through human attention. Think about that. An hour of listening can restore the biological foundation for a lifetime of achievement. This principle extends beyond individuals. It scales to teams, to organizations, to societies. A culture that prioritizes empathy, that values mental and emotional well-being alongside measurable output, produces not only happier people, but more capable, more innovative, and more resilient people. There is empirical evidence for this. Companies that cultivate psychological safety outperform their peers. Teams that practice attentive listening make fewer mistakes and innovate faster. And communities that invest in social cohesion demonstrate higher levels of collective intelligence. The science is clear. The human brain thrives on care, on recognition, on genuine attention. And when these elements are missing, brilliance can falter, even collapse. We are living in an era of unprecedented opportunity. The technological frontier is expanding faster than ever before. Yet, with all our focus on Mars, on neural networks, on renewable energy, we risk overlooking the most critical frontier of all, the inner lives of human beings, the mental, emotional, and neural systems that enable all progress. Neglecting this frontier is not just morally questionable, it is strategically short-sighted. The greatest innovations are meaningless if the minds that create them are not supported, nurtured, and above all seen. I want to emphasize a key point here. Empathy is not a soft skill, it is not a luxury, it is a strategic imperative. Neuroscience confirms that attentiveness, validation, and recognition are powerful modulators of brain function. They influence plasticity, resilience, memory, and motivation. They protect against the neurotoxic effects of chronic stress. In other words, caring is not sentimental, it is biological, it is the most sophisticated, scientifically grounded intervention we can provide, and it is available to all of us, without cost, without complication, at the simple level of human intention. Let me give you one final illustration. In high-pressure environments, whether space missions, biotech labs, or corporate boardrooms, we often assume that performance hinges solely on skill, knowledge, or technology. Yet data consistently shows that the differentiator is emotional engagement. People who feel recognized, valued, and understood are more likely to persevere, to take calculated risks, to innovate under pressure. Conversely, neglect, silence, or indifference can erode cognitive flexibility, suppress creativity, and increase susceptibility to error. The lesson is clear: attention, care, and empathy are not peripheral concerns. They are central to success, to innovation, and to the human experience itself. And so I return to the core message. If you care, even a little, the responsibility is simple yet profound. Listen, recognize, validate. Offer a moment of your undivided attention. It is a small act, but its consequences ripple outward in ways that are tangible, measurable, and transformative. Lives can be changed. Minds can be restored. Potential can be unlocked. It is the frontier we must prioritize, the challenge we cannot afford to ignore, and the gift we can all give. Freely, consciously, deliberately. Because in the end, progress is not only measured in the machines we build, the rockets we launch, or the algorithms we design. Progress is measured in the lives we touch, the minds we uplift, and the humanity we preserve. The technology of empathy is real, its impact undeniable, and its necessity urgent. Now take a minute, just one. Listen with intention. Engage with presence. Validate with authenticity. The results are not speculative. They are proven. And the human beings who receive that care will carry it forward in ways that echo far beyond your imagination. And while we are on the topic of human connection, I want to address a misconception that often goes unspoken, that vulnerability is weakness. In truth, vulnerability is the currency of meaningful impact. Our brains are wired to recognize authenticity. Our neural circuits respond to honesty, to openness, to the courage it takes to expose one's inner world. When someone admits struggle, when they reveal doubt, when they express need, it is not a burden. It is an opportunity. The opportunity to intervene in a way that is biologically, emotionally, and socially transformative. To ignore it is to forfeit a chance to influence the trajectory of a life, and by extension, the trajectory of our collective progress. Think about the astronauts I mentioned earlier, or the explorers pushing the boundaries of human endurance. They operate under extreme conditions, physically and mentally, but the difference between success and failure is rarely the mechanics or the technology alone. It is the cohesion, the trust, and the empathy within the team. Every experiment in human performance shows that emotional support, attentiveness, and recognition are non-negotiable for sustained achievement. And if this is true in extreme life or death situations, it is certainly true in the daily lives of those working quietly, tirelessly, to solve the world's most complex problems. Let me share a story from the world of mental health research. A neuroscientist conducted an experiment with patients experiencing severe depression, exposing them to brief yet intentional interactions with caring listeners. The outcomes were remarkable. In some cases, just a single hour of attentive engagement triggered measurable changes in neural connectivity within the prefrontal cortex and limbic system. Motivation improved, emotional regulation stabilized, and the ability to engage creatively returned. Imagine if every individual struggling in silence received even a fraction of that attention. Imagine the collective potential we could unlock, not in technology alone, but in the human minds powering it. And yet, the challenge persists. In a world that prioritizes output over presence, speed over attention, the simplest Xi'an, listening, can feel revolutionary. But it is exactly this intervention that holds the most profound potential for systemic change. Because when we invest in human attention, when we validate the lived experiences of others, we are not merely performing an act of kindness. We are strengthening neural circuits, restoring emotional equilibrium, and empowering individuals to realize their capabilities fully. We are multiplying the impact of every innovation, every solution, every technological breakthrough. Consider the young innovators, the visionaries, the dreamers who populate our universities, our laboratories, our companies. Their potential is limitless, yet their minds are susceptible to the same vulnerabilities we all face. Stress, doubt, isolation, and neglect can undermine brilliance faster than any technological challenge. Yet a single minute of focused care can create a cognitive and emotional reset, allowing creativity, resilience, and determination to flourish again. It is a profound reminder that the simplest interventions, ones available to all of us, can have effects as powerful as any technological marvel. We often glorify extraordinary achievements, the rocket that reaches Mars, the software that learns faster than a human brain, the device that transforms communication. But the most extraordinary achievements are fragile, dependent on the most delicate systems, the human mind and heart. Every neural circuit, every synapse, every emotional response is part of an intricate ecosystem. Neglect any part of it, and the system falters. Nurture it, support it, and the system thrives beyond expectation. Now, I want to challenge you to internalize this insight, to make it actionable. It is not enough to nod in agreement. The stakes are too high. Every day, in every context, there is an opportunity to listen, to engage, to validate, to care. And this is not a trivial recommendation. It is the recommendation science makes, the recommendation humanity makes, the recommendation reality makes, because in that single minute, a life can be saved, a mind can be unlocked, and the trajectory of potential, both individual and collective, can be radically altered. And finally, let me remind you that caring is contagious. When one person models empathy, attention, and validation, it spreads. Teams become more cohesive. Communities become more resilient. Entire ecosystems of innovation become healthier, more adaptive, more capable. It is the most scalable intervention we possess, and yet it costs nothing beyond the intention to act. The technology is not in the machines we build, it is in the human interaction we enable. That is the frontier that matters most. So I leave you with this. If you care even a little, do not underestimate the power of your attention. Do not underestimate the transformative impact of your presence. Take a minute, offer your listening, validate the struggle, recognize the humanity. It is not just an act of kindness, it is an act of innovation, a biological intervention, a leap forward for human potential. In that minute lies the power to shift trajectories, to restore hope, to reignite brilliance, and to create ripple effects that extend far beyond what we can imagine. Every innovation we pursue, every technological breakthrough we achieve, is meaningless if we neglect the minds and hearts that make it possible. To truly advance humanity, to truly honor the potential within each individual, we must remember this. We are all connected. The systems we create, the futures we envision, depend upon the health, resilience, and empowerment of those who inhabit them. And the simplest, most effective way to protect and amplify that potential is to listen, to care, and to recognize. So I ask you, pause, take that minute, engage with intention. Offer your attention not as a formality, but as a lifeline. And know this, in doing so you are shaping the future, not just of technology, but of humanity itself. The impact is profound, measurable, and lasting. And it starts now with a single act of presence, a single act of care, a single minute, because ultimately, the greatest frontier is not Mars, it is not artificial intelligence. It is the human mind, the human heart, and the simple, undeniable truth that when we truly see and hear each other, we unlock potential beyond measure. We restore hope, and we preserve the very essence of what it means to be human. And I want to take a moment to explore something that is often overlooked. The subtle, almost invisible ways in which neglect and unacknowledged struggle can ripple through a person's life. Imagine a brilliant mind, someone capable of solving problems that could change the course of human history. On paper, everything is perfect, credentials, accolades, opportunities. But inside, their mind is quietly under siege. Anxiety gnawing at their focus, self-doubt eroding their creativity, the crushing weight of unspoken loneliness pressing on their neural circuits. This is not rare. It is pervasive. It is the hidden cost of the world's obsession with output over attention. One of the most striking examples comes from the realm of scientific research. I once spoke with a young neuroscientist working on memory enhancement. His findings had the potential to transform how we treat neurodegenerative diseases. But he confessed with an almost trembling honesty that he had been struggling with burnout for months, that the isolation of his work was breaking him in ways no lab equipment could detect. He told me quietly that what he craved most was simple acknowledgement, that someone, anyone, would see him, hear him, recognize the struggle behind the breakthroughs. And when that acknowledgement finally came, when he felt heard, the transformation was immediate. Motivation surged, creativity returned. Even neural markers of stress showed measurable improvement. This is not a metaphor, it is a concrete illustration of the power of human attention, of empathy, and of genuine presence. Consider how this principle scales to society at large. We invest billions into technology, infrastructure, and space exploration. And yet, the single most powerful investment we can make, the investment in human connection, in empathy, in truly listening, remains underfunded, undervalued, and often dismissed. Every study in psychology and neuroscience confirms the same conclusion. Social isolation, unacknowledged struggle, and emotional neglect are not merely uncomfortable, they are neurotoxic. They disrupt memory, impair decision-making, increase susceptibility to depression, and even shorten lifespan. Conversely, acts of attention, care, and validation are neuroprotective, enhancing cognitive flexibility, resilience, and emotional regulation. This is the frontier of human optimization, yet it is accessible to every one of us at no cost, requiring only the intention to act. I recall another story, this time from a high-pressure corporate environment. A team of engineers was developing a revolutionary renewable energy solution, something that could dramatically reduce global carbon emissions. Their intellect was unmatched, their ambition unparalleled, yet they were collectively on the brink of burnout. Meetings were tense, creativity stalled, and stress markers were rising. One manager who recognized the stakes took a step that seemed almost trivial. She initiated daily check-ins, focused not on deliverables, but on emotional state. She asked simple questions. How are you? How are you really feeling? What can we do to support you? The impact was astonishing. Neural stress responses decreased. Cognitive performance surged. The team's breakthroughs accelerated. And this wasn't magic. It was neuroscience applied to human interaction. It was empathy turned into measurable innovation. Let me also speak to the power of listening in moments of extreme vulnerability. In clinical settings, patients with severe depression or anxiety often describe the sensation of being invisible, of their struggles being dismissed or minimized. Yet, when a practitioner or even a peer truly listens, when they respond with focused attention and empathy, the neural changes are profound. Brain imaging studies reveal increased activity in the prefrontal cortex, which governs executive function and emotional regulation, and decreased activity in the amygdala, the center for fear and stress. In essence, listening rewires the brain for resilience. It is a biological intervention, an empirical fact, and yet it is astonishingly underutilized. And here is the paradox. In a world obsessed with grand gestures, we often overlook the power of small ones. A single minute of listening, a single acknowledgement of struggle, a single act of presence. These are interventions with outsized impact. For someone on the brink, that minute can be the difference between despair and hope, stagnation and breakthrough, retreat and resilience. The brain, as complex as it is, responds to the simplest forms of care. And when we multiply these moments across teams, communities, and societies, the effect is exponential. Think about the most resilient innovators, the individuals who have shaped our world. Many of them attribute their breakthroughs not to solitary genius, but to mentors, colleagues, and friends who took the time to see them, to listen, to guide them with patience and empathy. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to adapt, is profoundly influenced by social feedback. Every conversation, every moment of attention, every act of recognition reshapes the circuitry of the mind, enhancing learning, problem-solving, and creativity. This is not abstract philosophy, it is concrete, measurable neuroscience. And yet the challenge remains, we live in a culture that prioritizes speed, metrics, and tangible outcomes. Emotional engagement is often seen as secondary, but this is a profound miscalculation. Ignoring the human brain, ignoring the human heart, is like building a rocket without ensuring structural integrity. You may launch, but the system is fragile. You may achieve short-term success, but long-term sustainability requires attention to the very systems that enable achievement. Empathy, connection, and care. I want to illustrate this with one final example. A team of researchers was working in isolation, developing a neural interface capable of mapping complex thought patterns. Their work could have enormous implications for brain-computer integration and artificial intelligence. Yet, weeks of solitude and pressure had left them exhausted and disconnected. The breakthrough came not from additional equipment or funding, but from a simple act. A mentor spent an hour engaging with each researcher, asking them about their experience, their feelings, and their concerns. Within days, stress biomarkers dropped, cognitive clarity returned, and creativity surged. The project accelerated at a rate previously deemed impossible. The lesson is unmistakable. Empathy and attention are no peripheral, they are catalytic. So, I urge you, in your own life, in your work, in your leadership, to recognize the profound impact of being present, to listen with intention, to validate without judgment, to care without hesitation, because these acts, as simple as they may seem, are the most powerful tools for unlocking human potential. They reshape brains, restore hope, and ignite innovation in ways that no algorithm, no rocket, no artificial intelligence can replicate. If you care even a little, if you recognize the weight of this responsibility, the path forward is clear. Take a minute, engage, listen, validate, and watch as the ripple effects transform not just individuals, but teams, organizations, and ultimately, the trajectory of human progress itself. For it is not only what we invent, but how we nurture the inventors that defines the legacy we leave. Because at the core, the greatest frontier is not a distant planet, not a new technology, not a complex system. It is the human mind, the human heart, and the capacity to truly see, hear, and value each other. And in that capacity lies the power to shape the future, to protect potential, and to ensure that every breakthrough, every achievement, and every dream is sustained by the very foundation that makes it possible, our shared humanity.